I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense of I was just who I was.
The cold exposure conditions the inside of our body to literally adapt.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Finding the grace and the humor.
Anti-aging is associated with at least an hour of deep sleep nightly.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
Nothing starts without a plan, nothing ever goes to plan.
Chaga is actually the most antioxidant rich food on the planet.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable. I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
And Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries. Hey guys, it's Jessica here, and you know I love my coffee. We have recently partnered with a company called La Repubblica Coffee. They are completely fair trade, they are non-GMO and all vegan, which you guys know I'm vegan, so I'm totally a fan. But the cool thing is that this is a mushroom coffee company. You know, sometimes people feel stuck in their coffee routine. They feel like they can't live with it, they can't live without it. Maybe coffee makes them feel overwhelmed. This coffee completely makes you feel so zen. It gives you a peace of mind and well-being and a clean energy jolt. You don't have any jitters that you get with coffee because the cordyceps really help to regulate the intake of caffeine from the coffee. It's a rich source of vitamin D, E, and many other things that help your immune function and optimal health. It's a perfect way to incorporate high beneficial superfoods into your morning routine. I love to start my morning with just a smooth cup.
This morning, I was so freaking excited because I ordered my bulk order. I'm telling you, George and I were literally waiting by the door yesterday. I'm not joking. And finally they came at like 7 and we were so excited, and George and I were like, should we drink this now?
Yeah, listeners, you guys are going to be so excited because you get 15% off all of your orders by using the code vulnerable, all caps 15. So vulnerable 15, all caps.
We only partner with companies that we believe in here at Bold and Vulnerable because we really value honesty and just being truthful to our audience. Being a working mom and entrepreneur, you really want to have all the hacks possible at your fingertips. So I'm so freaking excited to be partnering with this company.
Everyone that I've talked to who's tried it has been raving about how delicious it is. And we drink it during our podcast episodes, and just to give us a jolt of energy. It has 7 superfood mushrooms. So not only do you get the benefits and energy of your cordyceps, but you also get the healthy benefits of lion's mane. It gives you so much focus and immunity support. You also get this really nutrient-rich product that elevates your focus and also elevates your gut. So it's almost like using a smart blend of quality chaga, reishi, shiitake, turkey tail, and your immune system just gets this daily boost of energy. And it also helps to alkalize the effects of coffee's natural acidities.
Yeah, definitely. And what I really love about it is that they have a gold standard for their manufacturing, which I think is really important, which tells us that they have high standards, obviously, as do we here at Bold and Vulnerable. The benefits that you're receiving in 1 cup of coffee are just outstanding.
It's kind of like an anti-inflammatory for your body, which is absolutely amazing. And not only that, it has a wonderful taste. So I think that's everything that people are looking for. Even people that don't drink coffee, I think will probably enjoy the taste of La Repubblica coffee.
We have a discount code for you. It is all caps vulnerable 15.
Head over to larepublicasuperfoods.com and type in vulnerable 15. When you check out, you will receive a 15% discount on all of La Repubblica's mushroom coffee.
Get yourself an amazing adaptogenic cup of coffee. Hey everybody, I'm so excited for today's episode. This is Svetlana here, and I'm super excited for today's guest. We have Dr. Jen, who is a doctor in physical therapy and she's an internationally renowned physical therapist. And her specialty is in helping people with chronic pain and really maximizing their performance. And she has some really awesome programs online, the mobility method and the optimal body. So we'll get into that on the show today, but just a few more things about Dr. Jen that I'll also let her go on and share more about herself, is that she's one of the 50 most influential healthcare professionals on the internet right now. And she's been in Shape Magazine, Self Magazine, Men's Fitness, Muscle Fitness. She's also appeared on CBS, the Rise podcast with Rachel Hollis, and so many more. So I'm really excited to just get right into our show today and have Dr. Jen introduce herself and tell you more. Let's just get started. So thank you again for coming on the show. I'm really excited. Can you just share with our audience a little bit more about yourself and what it is that you do?
Sure. I think you said a lot of it, so thank you. I mean, basically, I've kind of been, just so fortunate to have graduated from physical therapy. I worked in a clinic for about 1.5 years and then just realized that the need in how I wanted to treat clients was not there in a typical clinic setting. I wanted time with clients. I didn't want to just pass them off to an aide. And there was so much more rather than just using modalities that I wanted to be able to do with clients that I just feel like wasn't promoted in that kind of environment personally for me. So that's when I started working on my own and taking on my own clients, and this whole social media thing continued to grow. And from there, it just kind of turned into, how can I help people not only in person with me, but now that social media is growing, how can I really make sure that what people are seeing and how they're moving into their bodies could be most effective for their bodies? Because I can't guarantee that you just seeing a random post would necessarily be what you needed for your body. So that's when, I decided to create the mobility method and the optimal body. And, it's just been such an incredible journey. And I must say, I'm just every day so grateful that I can be a physical therapist in this space where I'm not reliant on who I only see in front of me, but I can actually affect people without even touching them, and they can be around the world. So it's just been an incredible journey.
So I'm curious, what inspired you to go into this arena?
It kind of was like just a gradual thing of, I really enjoyed anatomy and biology when I was in high school. And I was obsessed with movement. I have always kind of been a mover my entire life. We were required to be in a sport as I was growing up. We had a boat, and so we would take it out every summer and go wakeboarding and skiing, and we went to the mountains every winter. And so I just grew up in a very athletic family. And I'm very fortunate for that because it was seen as a lifestyle. And so going into college, it was like, well, I like anatomy and biology, and I like moving my body, so I guess I'll do kinesiology. It was the only one that sounded exciting to me, which is the study of human movement. And as I was going through undergrad, I started interning and being an aide in some different clinics. And I really enjoyed how a physical therapist was walking the journey with someone. I felt like rather than just a doctor being there and initially looking at your symptoms or initially diagnosing, a physical therapist was actually the one who was walking you through your journey of, here's the problem, here's the pain, here's the diagnosis, to here you are running, here you are lifting, here you are doing whatever goal it is that you want to be going back to. So I thought it was such a amazing opportunity to just be able to get into that kind of field, and knowing and wanting to learn more about the body was just really exciting to me. And I was obsessed with watching how a physical therapist would just watch movement or feel movement in their hands. And I'm always like, what are they watching for, And so it excited me. And it came to a point where it was just okay, this is what I'm going to do. I don't like school and I hate that I have to go get my doctorate, but this is what I want to do. So that's what I did.
I love that you say that you really enjoyed walking the journey with someone. I really like that.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. I was like repeating in my head, like walking the journey with someone. That's really cool. It's almost you're taking them through this transformation.
Right. And because my main goal too is I don't want someone to come to me and feel like I'm fixing them, because that's not what I do. That's not what any clinician technically does. And if someone is saying that you need me and I'm fixing you, it's just not the reality, because the reality is the only people that can create the true change within ourselves is ourselves. And so if I am here as a facilitator and pointing out different awarenesses of your body that you might not be aware of, then I'm just helping guide along your own journey into your body. But I'm not doing anything. You have to do the work ultimately. I am just a guide.
I love that. I really like that. That's what I say in the work that I do as well. It's like I didn't do anything. I'm just here to be the facilitator and just be a vessel.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
That's amazing. I love that.
Jen, you've had your fair share of setbacks and injuries yourself too. I was kind of reading through, that you have suffered from scoliosis. You pulled your hip flexor several times, sprained your ankle, dislocated different body parts, but then yet never had physical therapy. And I wanted to kind of dive into how you took some of those bits of adversity in your own healing journey and have now brought them into helping your patients and your clients.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny that I actually, as a gymnast for 9 years, never went to physical therapy once myself, which probably should have quite a bit. It just wasn't as popular, I guess, then. And our coach would always be like, oh, we'll just sit out and condition if you can't do it right now and you'll be back soon. It was like, it was never, or we'll tape up your ankle, you'll be fine. It was never something to like, oh, let's go see how it can assist us as we continue to work out. It was just like, it just wasn't a thing. And so I never went, but yeah, I several times sprained an ankle, and then I just got used to taping my ankle. I came to a point by the time I quit where I didn't need to tape my ankle, but it was just a ritual. It was almost like a superstition. If I didn't tape my ankle, it's going to get hurt again. And so I would just get into this habit of having to tape my ankle all the time. I had to wear wrist guards on my wrist all the time, just because, again, it was like habitual. And, oh, I had wrist pain once. I don't want to have that again. So let me just wear them. And it became all these different things that were just so not necessary. And so it was so interesting to see that and be able to now work with people where I feel like going to see someone is so much more popular. And I love that young people in sport are being introduced to it at a young age as well, because it can only facilitate what happens within that sport and what happens along that journey. So it's so important. And then also, I think it's me being able to say that in my journey is proof of people to not get hung up on a diagnosis. And that's why I really like to say it. Like, I didn't know I had scoliosis. I was actually teaching Pilates at the time when I was in undergrad, I think I was still in undergrad. And I was at a chiropractic office teaching Pilates. And it was finally a year of teaching at this chiropractic office that they were like, do you want your free evaluation? Like, we could do it for you. And I was like, okay, let me just see what's happening. And so I did an evaluation with them, which I had been resistant to, not because I'm against chiropractic in any means, only because there was nothing wrong with me. I didn't have any pain. I didn't have any issues. And so when I did it and they showed me the x-ray, I really thought that they were like joking with me at first. I'm like, you pulled up someone else's x-ray. That's not mine, because there was a huge S curve in it. And I realized that I had scoliosis. And it made sense to me after I started to realize these things. Oh yeah, I do look in the mirror and I have one shoulder higher than the other, or I have one hip that kind of comes up a little bit higher than the other. Like, oh, that makes sense now as to why there's these differences in my body. But yet there was no issues. And so even like the chiropractor, he was like, just, stay healthy and you'll be fine. I'm like, okay, great. And that was my treatment. I'm like, let's just take care of your body, eat well, work out, you'll be good. And I've never had any issues. And I lift barbell. I put barbells over my back and I lift heavy. I do crazy acrobatic stuff and I bend my back a lot of different ways. And I continue to just play around with the capabilities of my body because a diagnosis doesn't hold anyone back. And so that's my main point of being able to share that journey with people. Do I work on different restrictions? 100%. Do I work on different weaknesses that my body might have? 100%. And am I kind of always trying to see where I can become more efficient, more effective within my movement patterns? Yes, all the time. But I'm also not looking for a certain structural perfection. I'm not looking for symmetry because it's not reality. We use one hand more than the other all the time. What, are you going to start using both? I mean, you can, but it's not necessary. So we're always one-handed dominant, especially if you're in a throwing type sport. If you're an athlete and you step with one leg or you kick with one leg more than the other, it's natural to have these asymmetries in the body. And so it also drives me crazy when people are like, well, my hips are out of alignment. And I'm like, well, mine probably are too. And yet I'm not, stepping off a curve and nothing's happening because it's fine. We're going to have these little things that happen within our body, and our organs are all different places within our body and misshaped and, putting different pressures as we breathe. So of course, if there's things on the inside that are not symmetrical, and that's going to cause different kinds of pressures into my rib cage, into my thoracic spine, into ultimately all the way down into my feet. If it's going to cause different pressures all the way down, there's going to be differences on the outside as well. And so there's never this perfect posture that we need to be going for, or this perfect symmetry, or this perfect alignment in your hips, or else you're going to have to continue to go back to that person over and over and over again because they need to align your spine and align your hips. And it just, that wording kind of drives me a little bit crazy, and I don't blame anyone for doing it. It's what a lot of us are taught in school. I don't think it's the most supportive language for a person to hear, because then they become reliant and they become scared of getting out of alignment. And there is no fear in getting out of alignment. It is how we live. We live in, standing on one foot more than the other, leaning to one side more than the other. What we want to do is just continue to change, explore different places. If you're standing on one foot more, okay, let's explore standing on the other foot now. If I'm hunched, okay, let's explore getting out of that position more often throughout the day. The best posture is the next posture. It's not one static one. So I just wish that people would lose the fear of these things that we've been told about our bodies.
I love the optimism behind your whole entire message, but I agree with you. I think the language is misleading for some people. And I had a similar experience at the chiropractor where I went in my first chiropractor appointment, and I was just doing it because I was like, let me see what this is all about. I'm into health, I'm into wellness and fitness, and I've never been to the chiropractor. And it was back in 2016, I think. And I looked at the x-ray that they took before my initial appointment. It was just kind of like the first appointment. They took some x-rays in my spine, and they were like, you have some scoliosis going on. I had no idea. I was like, what? I don't know. And honestly, I kind of didn't really think anything else of it from that point. I mean, they were kind of trying to drive it home with me and telling me to come more often. And I was kind of like, I'm just going to do me because I don't feel it and I've never felt it. And I'm kind of very set in my beliefs and my ways. So I didn't kind of fall victim to having to go back to the chiropractor every single week because somebody told me something about my spine. But I totally felt you on that, because I feel like that might happen to a lot of people. They might not know, and then they go to one appointment and they're like, oh my God, now I have to go to the chiropractor every week or every month or whatever it is.
That's amazing that you didn't fall into that, because I mean, most people would,
Yeah, I mean, I took it with a grain of salt. I saw the x-ray and I said, you know what? I'm really active. I'm really into health and wellness and fitness. I eat right. If I have scoliosis, so be it, you know?
Exactly.
But I also felt you really hard on, I didn't realize that you were a gymnast growing up. And it just kind of took me back. I was not a gymnast, but I was a cheerleader, and we had elements of gymnastics that we had to perform for routines and things like that. And so I learned the roughest form of gymnastics, which was not the correct form, and it was the cheerleading version, which I'm sure annoys real gymnasts, and it annoys me that I didn't learn it correctly. But at the same time, I felt you because I cheered in college, Division One, really intense, and anytime there was an injury, we did not give physical therapy. There was not a therapist for our school, which there very well should have been, and if you had an injury, it was kind of like, okay, sit out tonight in practice, and we'll see you back tomorrow, or you're kind of like shit shit out of luck, you know. So I'm happy that to hear that they're, you know, it's becoming more popular in not only schools but in sports where, you know, kids get hurt and they really I mean, it can be dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And just having that support, it helps, you know, and having the team. And that's what I like to say, like your doctor, your therapist, your chiropractor, your personal trainer, like have them be a team. There doesn't have to be one person doing it all.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think all of us have scoliosis. I think we all
To
have the
some
same.
degree, we can have functional scoliosis, which is what we build over time and through different compensatory patterns, which is okay. And I've
Yeah.
had someone say to me, you know, oh, well, my chiropractor told me, you know, never to load my spine anymore because I have scoliosis. And I said, well, then you better not stand, you know, like you better not get out of bed because that's compressing at the spine. And so it saddens me. And it's not just chiropractors, like, believe me, I have, there's, yeah, it can go across the board in any kind of field. And I have nothing against chiropractors. I learn a lot from them myself. I have friends who do amazing, incredible work. And I actually believe that if you're coming to a clinician who is really wanting to look at the overall picture of not just the body part, but who you are, like your environment that you surround yourself in, your stress levels, the food that you're eating, you know, every the main goals of what you're trying to get back to, then there's really no difference between a chiropractor and a physical therapist. Truly, the good ones, because physical therapists adjust. We just call it manipulation. And chiropractors can do movements and soft tissue and all of that stuff. So it's like when we're really treating a human, there's so much overlap, and that's okay. Like whatever you went to school with, cool, you're a DC or you're a DPT, but we're still just treating a human. And there shouldn't be a competition, and you shouldn't really be able to tell the difference when you're really seeing someone who's helping you in your body.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like we all have, like I mentioned, like we all have a similar story. Like I went to the chiropractor also, and then they did the X-ray, and I have a really accentuated S curve as well, and like it's in my lower spine, like my lower lumbar area. So it's like I kind of like stick out, like I have a weird posture, weird alignment, but same thing, like I never stopped lifting. Like I could lift like 125 pounds. I could never really, it never really like dictated my life, like, oh no, I need to do this. And I'm grateful for the fact that I feel like, you know, as you mentioned, like there are chiropractors out there that are like, you must rely on me, you know, the ones
Same with physical therapists. There's physical
yeah,
therapists who say the same thing.
exactly. And I feel like the ones that I've met in my life have been just sort of like, all right, let me just like support you in like your lifestyle, you know, like, and the type of chiropractors that I have two types. I have NSA doctors. Have you heard of them in your field, network spinal analysis?
No, I haven't.
So it's like light touch. So they're not even really, they're manipulating your spine more through breath. And it's almost like, it's like energy work. Like it basically is energy work. Like you're moving energy through the spine, by touching certain gateways. And I'm cracking my spine myself, like aligning myself back into alignment essentially. And it's cool because like I can self-sustain now because I can just do it on my own if I'm feeling sort of like out of alignment, off.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let me stretch forward, like move my posture forward, and I instantly feel better. Like it's almost like, you know, that position where like your arms are like behind you and your like neck is out. I'm like doing it right now.
Yeah.
And
And
it
the
feels
reality
better.
is you're just doing something different than what you were doing before.
Yeah.
And when we do more varied movements, we teach our nervous system that it is safe to do that. And it is safe in any kind of posture, rather than fearing one and developing pain in one. And so that is like, movement is king always. We always want to get back to movement. We can have all these other things that help support it, but ultimately someone else doing something to you is only going to support the symptoms of pain. It's not going to get back to the cause.
I love that.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about your diagnosis does not define you. And we had Kelly Gores on here from the Heal documentary, and she had a similar comment that she made. You know, don't understand your diagnosis, but don't believe that as the end all be all. You know, understand it and acknowledge it, and do your research, but it doesn't have to define who you are. And I love that that's your message as well. I'm curious about. I know that you're big into mobility and that you have different videos on mobility. What are you working on now? Like, what are the big hot topics within mobility or within the space that you're working within?
I mean, really, mobility found me, I like to say. I would always post, okay, if we're going to talk about a diagnosis, we start here at mobility, then we go into correctives, then we go into strengthening, and then, and so I'd kind of show the entire wave of everything that you can move through for one particular injury. And this isn't like king, this is like the possibilities. But I would always start at mobility because that's your foundation. I mean, just like a baby doesn't learn to crawl and walk and build strength until they can literally, it's a developmental milestone to suck on your toes. So they're naturally building in that mobility within their body before they start to motor pattern, before they start to build and strengthen. And so getting back to that foundation is just, it makes sense. It's why not gain the range and make sure your body feels safe in that range before I start loading it. So that's all it is. And so I would show that. And those were always the most popular videos, which is so funny. And I'm like, why don't these other ones do well? Like, people don't care about the correctives. People don't care about the strength from me. And so that's when I was like, okay, well, it makes sense though. If I'm going to come out with a program that I want to help the most people, I want to make sure that it's in integrity, right? I don't know that everyone can start at strength. I don't know that everyone needs corrective exercises. I know that most people are lacking a foundation of mobility because we sit in chairs, we sit in cars, we're not moving enough into these end range positions. So I can definitely support in that, and that feels an integrity and an alignment, and I know that everyone wants to see it. So that's kind of why I went into the mobility method first. I just knew that my audience was wanting to see that from me. And when I asked, because I asked before I did anything, I asked if I were to come out with something for you guys, what would you want to see? And everyone said mobility. And now in this space, I'm so excited that breath work is becoming so popular, because that's truly, like, if we go back even more, that's the foundation before you even become mobile. Our breath dictates every signal within our body, and we can manipulate mobility just by increasing how we're breathing, or optimizing how we're breathing, or changing it or shifting it in a certain way. We can change the way that we respond to different stimuli. We can change the way that we feel pain. We can change the way that we move. We can all of a sudden be able to touch our toes if you couldn't within like 5 minutes, So the fact that breath is becoming so popular, I'm loving now being able to feel like that's sexy to talk about, where before it wasn't. No one cared if I showed box breathing. They'd be like, okay, now what? Show me a cool mobility flow. But now I can show and utilize these tools and talk about it as your baseline into mobility if you're even trying to gain, even if we're talking about strength, if we're talking about muscle activation, your body's always going to be tense and everything's going to be activating unless we get back to the parasympathetic and teach it how to relax. And then we can start activating after that. So it's a cool tool to be able to now utilize that as well.
I totally feel that, being a yoga teacher and using breath every day, but I'm so glad that you mentioned it. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
I'm really happy you mentioned breath as well. I feel like all of us here are in alignment. We're all just super driving because breath is literally life. I have breath tattooed on my forearm. I was after a trip I took to Israel. It was like, just breathe. You can literally just change your state. You can change, like what you mentioned, your parasympathetic nervous system becomes activated. If you just start breathing, you can breathe yourself out of fear, right? Into bliss, really, like into gratitude, into just, I mean, there's just so much to it. And I keep coming back to my birth because this is so relevant right now in my life, in my season. And I had to breathe throughout my birth. Like I did, over 2 days of no medication, no meds, so much pain, but I breathed through it. And somehow I was able to do it, like, and it was extremely painful. But I mean, if you really breathe, and if you make sounds, and I mean like primal sounds too, because this is something that I learned in NSA, like the breathing that we have to do there. It's like, it may not sound, like you said, sexy, like it may be like, you know, like, but you need to make those sounds, because isn't that like going back to basics, really? Isn't that like where we came from?
Exactly. And most people are so afraid to release that kind of control, because we need to be in control of everything that is happening. And I don't want to sound crazy, and I don't want to do this. Oh, but when you release it, your body will thank you.
Well, you're literally, I feel like it goes back to everything you're promoting, like everything that you're about, which is like that's it, self-sustainability, not having to rely on a doctor or anybody, really. Like you can heal yourself. Like you can bring your body back to like normal, like back to, or not even normal, but like better, really, if you can release, if you can learn to let go, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's just so many, like, if getting someone back into breath, you just think about it in the very, very basics is what I like to take people back to. If we're thinking about the inhalation state and the exhalation state, we can say one is dominated more in the parasympathetic, where one is dominated more in the sympathetic. And if someone scares you and you go, you take a breath in, that's obviously more geared into turning on that sympathetic state. And if you're going to be, then doing a long exhale, think of like going to get a massage, and you're like, it feels so relaxing and so good. That's your exhalation state. That's your parasympathetic. And so if we can just utilize more tools, like one of the tools is just, okay, if that's more of my parasympathetic, then I just increase my exhalation, decrease my inhalation. I'm already turning on and starting to tap into that parasympathetic system. Like it doesn't have to be complicated. We don't need to learn, there's so many different types of breath work out there, and they're all amazing and beautiful. And I would say people get to explore that. But if you want to just start at the basics, just think of a shorter inhale, a longer exhale. Like that's it. And then if we can start to, use more of our nasal breathing, that really helps to support the system as well, and turning on that parasympathetic and getting us to relax and breathe calmer and not take such huge breaths into our chest. Like the old way of thinking of like, oh, relax, take a deep breath, lift your shoulders up to the ears. I think that's finally maybe hopefully dying down a little bit, because that is that inhalation state. Like, why am I trying to rev up my system? If I want to tell someone to relax, I actually want them to relax their shoulders. I don't want their shoulders to get a big, deep chest inhalation. I actually want them to take a nice slow inhalation and nice and around their like filling up that low rib cage area in the sides, in the front and the back. And then I want them to do a really slow exhalation if that's the state that I'm trying to get someone to turn into. And even if it's like, even think about kids and saying like, oh, go and time out and making them stare at a wall, like even our vision dictates our parasympathetic and sympathetic. So if I am narrowing my vision, if I'm focusing on something, so someone in the zone of work, right, they're going to be staring at their screen of their computer or on their phone, that is more of a sympathetic state. But now if I'm going to look out at a sunset or sunrise and I'm going to increase, I'm looking forward, but I'm looking at everything around me at the same time, and I'm doing this panoramic view, I'm automatically more in my parasympathetic. And that's why even when you're eating, if you really want to start to absorb the food and digest, you don't want to be staring at a screen. You don't want to be looking at the computer or looking at your phone. You want to try to just be able to take in the scenery, even if you're inside, that you're just like looking forward, but you're taking in the environment around you. And even that is going to help your body to actually be able to absorb the nutrients that we're trying to take in and actually be able to digest and not have all these GI issues. I mean, there's so much that we can start at that baseline if we just start to learn how to better regulate our system.
Yeah, Svetlana, as you were saying that you were making tribal noises, and then Jen, listening to everything that you just said about the parasympathetic nervous system and how it can control our processes of digestion and respiration and heartbeat, and I mean almost everything, it brings me back to, even yogic breathing and releasing noise as you're exhaling. And Jen, you mentioned that people are kind of uptight, they want to keep control of it, and I always try to get people in my classes, I'm like, release your vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in your body. It's in your brain. Like, if you release that, it helps with inflammation, it helps with digestion. Release it and let out some noise, get some sound healing of your own primal voice and your own exhale. So even making noises as you exhale, but bringing it just back to those basics is so important. Hey listeners, quick interruption to your podcast. For those of you that can't see Svetlana and I right now, we both have coffee mugs in our hand and we are always sipping on our La Repubblica coffee. And you guys can actually enjoy the benefits and the adaptogens and all the beautiful qualities of this coffee as well, because they are actually our partners and our sponsors.
Well, I'm obviously sipping on my La Repubblica coffee right now. I can't do a podcast interview without it. Nothing really works the way that this stuff works. There really is something in this coffee, and I mean it's the mushrooms, it's the reishi that gives you sort of like that zen feel.
I know it's wintertime right now, and if you guys maybe are feeling a little stuffy or feel a little tingle in your throat, this is the perfect elixir that can not only fight a common cold, but it helps your skin glow, your hair grow thicker, and reduces inflammation in your body. Chaga is amazing. It also contains cordyceps for better performance and increased energy, but not the crash that coffee might give you from a caffeine standpoint.
Combating mom brain and fatigue right now, it's really helping me maintain focus and maintain that sustainability that I need to get on throughout my day, especially with a newborn and running multiple businesses.
You guys are going to love this coffee. Not only does it have the 7 adaptogenic mushroom extracts, but it will certainly transform your morning coffee ritual. And it's really something that you can integrate really easily into your peak performance habits.
I can attest to La Repubblica's coffee being one of the best elixirs that I've tried thus far, and I have tried several. I never, ever, ever talk about products unless I love them. If you guys are interested, we do have a discount code. It is
vulnerable, all caps 15. So vulnerable 15. Head over to larepublicasuperfoods.com and type in vulnerable 15. When you check out, you will receive a 15% discount on all of La Repubblica's mushroom coffee. Thanks for listening. Go grab your 15% discount. And now back to our episode. And Svetlana, I don't know if you have any other questions on breath, but I kind of wanted to ask you, Jen, about your childhood, because I read that you were really shy growing up, and I can't even imagine that now just talking to you. So I wanted to kind of dive into your childhood and see if we could learn more about you, just like how you became the human that you are.
Yeah. I don't know why I took on that label of shy. I can even remember like I didn't want to talk to strangers. I would hide behind my mom. And I think getting into a sport where I found like my community, I was like, oh, this is where I live now. Like I only am hanging with my gymnast friends or my small group of school friends. Like I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be out in the world. And I was just very shy. And I think I took that label on to just be like, oh, I'm the observer. Like, I'm not going to be the one who's extroverted and going out and going up to people and, all that. I'm just going to be the one that's reserved and in the back. And I'm the peacemaker and I'm like here for everyone. And that's just the labels that I automatically took on in life. And very much became a people pleaser. And even when it came to deciding to quit gymnastics at age 16, I remember I wrote a letter to my mom to tell her that I wanted to quit because I knew that she'd be disappointed. And it was just also, it was, this fear of disappointing my parents, this fear of disappointing my coaches and not wanting to let people down. Mm-hmm. And that was just how and obviously in a sense, I don't want to let my friends down. I'm going to be loyal. And that's one of my, my values that I stick to very strongly. I always want to be in integrity. I always want to show up for people when I say I'm going to show up for people. But at the same time, I'm able to use my voice as I do all of that. And before I didn't, and it took me a long time to be able to get there. And it took going through personal development programs and people telling me that I was talking negative to myself and bringing more things to my awareness that I wasn't aware of or that I thought was just normal and fine.
I want to ask, with the label that you took on of being shy, would you say that is something, could that possibly be something that perhaps someone may have said as you were growing up, like, oh, she's just shy? She's just
Probably.
shy. And you were just like, oh yeah, that's who I am. And like, you just created like that whole, like that became like your field of perception. And that's kind of like how you operated.
I mean, I think that probably played a role, but it probably came out based on my behavior as well.
Yeah.
So both.
Yeah, no, I'm always curious. I'm always so curious about people's like, why, like not even why, but like, cause I don't judge people based on their actions and like their behaviors. Like if in what I do, it's like I always have to remind myself people are not their behavior, because their behaviors are like just habits sometimes that they've just adopted and they don't even realize that they're habits really. And sometimes they're really quote unquote bad habits. And again, that's a label, bad, right? Because they may just not know any better, right? And it comes down to like, what is your awareness? And shout out, by the way, one of my biggest values in life is loyalty and honesty. Like sometimes I've been there myself, like sometimes to a fault, like loyal to the point of like, I'm hurting myself.
Exactly. Ditto. I got shingles. My body was trying to tell me like, hello.
So I feel you. It's like, sometimes we have to take a look at like those value systems and be like, wait a second, like I'm loyal, but like, what sort of boundaries and standards have I set in that loyalty realm of like,
exactly.
What does that mean? Does that mean that like you can just step all over me and I can continue being loyal?
Yeah, exactly. Setting boundaries and respecting yourself first in that loyalty.
Yeah, we're getting vulnerable right now, so I wanted to dive in. I know we were just kind of touching on childhood, but this can be anything. Could you share with us maybe one of the most vulnerable moments that you've gone through, whether that's professionally or personally, what kind of adversity you've been through, or most vulnerable moment that you've been through that's really changed you and changed who you are as a person.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got to see that of me because I decided to share about it, and somehow that post went viral.
I know which post you're talking about.
Yeah.
They were like, I love you. I love your honesty.
Yeah, so I decided to open up about finding out that I was in a relationship that was unfaithful, because I didn't want anyone to feel like there's shame around that. I mean, obviously there was shock when I first found out, and I got to use my breath techniques so that I can get out of anxiety and panic, which was really cool. But also, I was getting so many messages at the time of like how normal it is and how often it happens, and other people who were saying that, they haven't told anyone, and they feel so shamed that it's happened to them. And I'm like, why? Like, it doesn't mean anything about you. Someone's actions don't, or someone's choices are their choices. That doesn't mean that's your choice. Your choices are your choices. So it just is. No judgment around it. It just, that's what happened. And so I wanted to make sure that the message out in the world is that we all get to choose our own responsibilities. And your responsibility when you find something like that out is, what was it that you weren't looking at, that you weren't trusting, that you weren't becoming more aware of or listening to yourself? Was there something that you weren't respecting within yourself that you were allowing someone else to do? What was it that just, how can I own responsibility in taking control for myself and using my voice and trusting myself and understanding that it's brave if I stay and decide to say, okay, this is what gets to change and this is the work that gets to happen. Because the reality is that some people do have to stay. There's kids, there's finances, there's so many other things. And it's not just about, oh, you cheat and you're gone, And it's also brave to walk away and to make that choice. But then how are you not drawing that back in? What is it that you're really standing for within yourself? And so I just felt called to come forward with my story for whatever reason. And I got a lot of feedback before I posted anything. I made sure that I chatted with a lot of people so that I wasn't coming from a place of revenge, and that I was truly standing in a place of strength and support for other people. And by seeing the messages that I got, like over like thousands of messages, I can't even tell you. I still get DMs today where they're talking about something recently, but I look back and I'm like, oh, I missed their previous DM that was about that situation, because I wasn't able to get to everyone, and to see that it had that level of impact is something that I'm very proud of myself for sharing. And it was very vulnerable, and I have gotten pushback, and it was like the scariest moment of my life. I remember posting it. I went on a live right after just to say, like, this was a very vulnerable post. Please have compassion for me. And I was like shaking. I was on that live for probably 2 minutes because I was shaking. And I was like, okay, I can't hold the phone anymore. Bye. Because I didn't know what would happen from that. And I had zero idea it was going to go viral and so many people were going to see it. I thought, I could have so much hate for this, for even saying anything. And that was 100% the most vulnerable I've ever been, and the most connecting it's ever been for this social media world that I live in.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about kind of the social media aspects to that, but thank you so much for sharing. It is brave. Did you stay with that person in a brave setting, or did you courageously leave the setting? Because I know you mentioned both are courageous, both are brave, and I agree with you. What was your decision to move forward?
My decision was to leave immediately. for me, it was like the universe slapping me in the face, like, hello, I've tried to give you all the signals. Now will you wake up? We were just not meant to be together. And I was truly trying to say, like, no, but this is right. This is what it's supposed to be. And I just have to sacrifice, and I just have to accept that this is the relationship I'm in. And there were so many things that I was not okay with, and I was not happy, but I was like, but I'm choosing that this is what it's supposed to be. And rather than standing for myself and saying, no, I don't have to stay in this. We're very different people. Why am I allowing this for myself? I stayed until I found out the information that I did. And I'm grateful that it came to that, because there were so many lessons in that. It was like immediately when I found out, I really did have this wave of freedom of like, oh my God, I can trust myself. And it was this weight that just lifted off. Now, when I say I can trust myself, I didn't think anything like that was happening. I didn't think there was any kind of unfaithfulness happening. But I did think that I shouldn't be here. And so when that happened, because like I said, I got shingles that year. This was already like 4.5 years of being together, and I get shingles. I was like, it felt like a little girl inside me was trying to scream to be heard. That's how I explained the shingles to my therapist at the time. And so I knew, my body knew everything. I knew that I shouldn't have been there. And so that's the trust that I got to have. Of like, gosh, I'm powerful. I know I have this intuition that just can sense things, and I get to listen to that. How cool is that? So it was this immediate freedom of that I'm just grateful for.
Yeah, our bodies will tell us for sure. And in terms of the social media and kind of being vulnerable on a platform like Instagram and a live feed, that's scary, and that is vulnerable in our world of technology and all the bullying that goes on online. That is very brave. And what kind of responses did you get? I know you said some were really supportive and some weren't. Like, was there bullying going on, or what happened after you shared that?
There wasn't honestly too much negative pushback, which was actually I'm very grateful for. I would say there was more negative pushback toward my ex, which I also wasn't intending. And I try to keep saying, like, it's not a he said, she said. There's no sides in this. I never gave distinct things. I continue just say there is unfaithfulness. To what level? I don't say. Because it's not about that. And I would say that was a lot of stuff that I was dealing with. And then, yeah, there wasn't too much negative pushback. There was just some comments that were just not like, it kind of rolled off my back. A lot of them don't really get to me. And then I've gotten just negative pushback, I would say, on responses that people have shown me from my ex, and that's probably the most negative pushback I've received, but that's okay.
I'm curious, when you said, just taking it back a little bit, when you said you had that moment where you're like, wow, like this is freeing, like I can finally trust myself, that you have this intuition and this magic about you, which is true. It's all true, right? We all have it. When do you feel like you started to ignore it and, make up reasons as to why you should be in a relationship with someone that is just not right for you?
I just don't think I even had the awareness. I think I was just I just didn't even have the awareness that I wasn't listening to my intuition. Because
Yeah.
I was still on the back end. I was then thriving in work because rather than like, okay, I've done all I can for my relationship, so I'm just going to continue to focus in on what I can. I was thriving in other areas, and so I was like, I felt like what I've done in work has all been built on like, oh well, this is what people want, this is what's next, this is what's coming, and there has been this intuitive flow that has happened, and I'm extremely grateful for it. And so in that sense, I felt like, well, but I am listening, I am paying attention to whatever my intuition is. And I did know that I was not okay. And then I got shingles. So I'm like, see, I'm not okay. This is why I'm going to and wanting to see a therapist. And this is why. So there is still like, I think that at the time, because for that relationship, we had been together for about a year and then we broke up for 5 months. And then by this point, we were back for 3 years, over 3 years. And so coming back for that long, when we already had the break, when he came back, it was like, we're going to get married, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and all these promises of what I've always wanted. And so I held on to that of like, but we did the breakup, we got back together, this is what's going to happen. And it was almost like this trying to be in control of it and trying to force something into existence and hanging on to these enough words, to
Yeah,
keep
that's what I was gonna
going.
basically like. That's basically what I was curious about is like, was there some sort of like, in a way, like I guess like story or like expectation because it's like, oh, work is going good, this is thriving, like then this area, like this is how it's supposed to be or whatever, and these are the plans that we made.
Yeah, basically. And I was going to be determined to stick to that.
I feel you.
Loyalty in you.
I feel you.
I know,
I mean,
exactly.
well, you talk about how like it's like some people stay and some people they leave, right? And I remember when I messaged you and I was following you before that, before even like you made that post, because I was like really interested in your mobility posts and your correction posts. I was always like, oh, so this is the correct way. Here's the wrong way and here's the right way. And I would be like showing my boyfriend, I'm like, look, this is really cool. This is like, let's try this. But like I'm a person that stayed, right, with and we're currently together right now, we have a baby. But like we both were like, the story behind that is like we both were like at this level of awareness where we didn't know, and then we both decided to grow and evolve and be better. So it's like for anybody listening, right, if it's happened to you, it's like, remember, there's no shame. Like
Exactly.
there's no shame at all, whether like you stayed, whether you left. Like things happen and it's not bad. Like it's like I feel like we need to get out this label of like, this is really bad, you're an idiot for just the judgments. That shit really
So
pisses
much
me off.
judgment. I know, it's so sad. And there's just, I mean, this world that we live in now, I think we've opened up more room for judgment, right? With social media and everyone having an opinion. But if we can just, it's not right, wrong, good, bad. It's just what works, what is working. And if you can find a place where it's like, that wasn't working, obviously, because something of disloyalty happened. Well, then how can we get back to a place of, would it work? And can it work? And if that's what you're both committed to, and I would say I have seen relationships, I have been very, very, very close to people where I'm the confidant that people are kind of calling on, and I have seen relationships go through the ringer, and the growth that they've both done, the work that they've both done, have brought them to a much stronger place as individuals and as a couple. And so there is no right or wrong way. There is zero judgment. It is what is your intention, and are you both moving to that intention? If you're just going to be like, oh, let's sweep it under the rug, pretend it didn't happen, and just move on, that's when it becomes dangerous for both people, because then both people aren't getting heard or seen or anything.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I feel like everything that you're saying is like, I feel like in our story, it's one of those things where like we were repeating like history of like what we saw growing up. And then we both realized, you know what? We don't really want to, repeat the same history and the story of our families, because that's what we saw, and a lot of like sweeping it under the rug, pretending like
Yep.
things aren't really happening. Like
Yep.
I saw a lot of that in my childhood, and it was just like, yeah, you know what? This doesn't work. I see where this goes, and I'm gonna choose a different route.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But thank you so much for being like so open and honest and vulnerable. And that's really like what we value on this show. And, that's one of our values, is just sharing stories of, different, just from different viewpoints, different perspectives, and just holding that space and honoring one another and just really listening.
Yeah, I appreciate that you guys open up that space to be able to do that, because I think that's people's biggest fear in coming out with a vulnerable story or sharing anything with anyone, is that will someone be able to hold the space for me in what I need, and not fixing it, not making it better, just holding space. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to be able to give people.
Yeah, I think it's harder too for people that are in positions like yourself and Svetlana and I, who, are the teachers. We're the givers. We're the people who are almost like the quote healers in our space, and it's almost harder for us to come out with stuff like that, because we are nervous that the people that we treat and our clients might look at us differently. And I think it does nothing but create connection. Like you said, you felt the most connected.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. And we definitely want to make sure that we're not just focusing on what you do for a living. Of course, you're a doctor, so that is a huge part of your life, but you're also a human. And so thank you for sharing. I want to make sure we focus on your programs too, and that we do get into a little bit of career stuff and Dr. Gen Fit and all of that. So can you kind of walk us through your programs and what you can help clients with, in case anyone wants to get in touch?
Yeah, my biggest thing is that I just want to bring people back into awareness of their body, and the best tool that I've found to be able to do that is through education. It's what's worked online, and I love educating. I love continuing to teach people about their bodies and get them to move and open up in different ways and possibilities that they didn't even think about. And so I created a membership called the Optimal Body, where for just $20 a month, it's a place to be able to learn different types of HIIT kind of workouts. So yes, they're high intensity, but they're going to be single leg balance, different kind of core work, rotation. So different things than you would see in a typical HIIT or a typical lift session, even, because my goal is to bring you again into that awareness, into areas of your body that you weren't even tapping into. And then there's core workouts there as well, because the core is not just about the six pack. It's actually our pelvic floor, our diaphragm, our back, our front. And so learning how to utilize that whole pressure system so that you can maximize what we're actually doing outside of that. And then mobility flows. So for every part of the body, I have spine, lower, full body, that you could do as warm-ups, as cool downs. You could do them on recovery days, but just to kind of keep every single area of your body healthy and moving. And that mobility isn't just about passive stretching, but it's really about activation and opening up in your body in a new way to be able to, again, bring you back into areas that you weren't really noticing might have even been restricted. And then I also have mindset tools in there as well, just to continue to get people connected to that mind and body, because that is your brain does, or your body doesn't feel anything unless your brain tells it. So getting that connection back, getting that breath back is so important. So that's why I love, and we're just continuing to optimize the optimal body by putting in new videos. We're going to be adding new content soon. My boyfriend, who's also a doctor of physical therapy, is going to be adding in some things into it as well, because he's also an amazing chef. So I'm excited just to continue to grow that membership and have the community continue to grow and learn in there. I think it's going to be just so incredibly awesome. And then I also have the mobility method for people who want to dive in like to specifics. And there's a whole self-assessment, 26 different movements, and all of the mobility tools that you would ever need so that you can go back and look at it at any time. It's just a one-time payment for that one.
That's amazing. And I also just really quickly, like, just taking it back back to the conversation that we had right before this, because we were like so focused on like just this whole situation of like what happened. I wanted to give a shout out, or like have like give you like the space to like also talk about like your incredible relationship too. And you brought him up now, how you're like, my boyfriend is doing this too. Like, just want people to know that you're, you know, happy and in
Yes.
love and in this amazing relationship, if you want to share on that.
Yes, I am. I for me, it was just like getting so effing clear and being so unapologetic about it. There was no more tiptoeing around feelings and saying like, oh, is this too soon to bring up? Or I don't know, I don't want to push a guy away. Like, nope. I was just like, that's who I am. This is what I want. This is what I don't. And I laid it out all on the line right away. And we connected on levels I've never ever felt or experienced in my life. We're aligned in so many different, like just everything. He's my person, and I am so grateful that I went through what I went through, because I wouldn't be able to stand in the confidence of who I am and ask for what I want and be unapologetic and, you know, just stand in that if it wasn't for everything that had happened.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing everything today, and for your expertise and just your story, your vulnerable story, because like Jess said, you know, like we're human, and like that's why we bring on guests, and we're always like, yeah, this person may be an expert in this arena or have this many followers or be like this millionaire, whatever, right? But at the end of the day, we're all human.
Yeah,
We all have feelings, we all have emotions.
I'm just curious about any books that you would recommend. Anything that you're reading now can be personal or professional, but just wanted to kind of dive into what you're reading, or any book that you've most gifted in your field.
I really love going back again to The Oxygen Advantage is such a great one for me. And I really like The Body Keeps the Score. I'm still reading that one. I need to devote more time to reading for sure. But both of those are just, they help. Well, Oxygen Advantage, it gives you so much more insight into your breath and your body on a very scientific medical way, but in a sense, it helps it to make sense why we hum when we're doing meditation, why we do nasal breathing, and how that can maximize not only your body but performance and anxiety and all those things. And then The Body Keeps the Score, if you're having any kind of chronic pain issues that you've been moving through in your life, I think it is such a beautiful one to be able to read.
I've heard of that book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's on my list. I heard it's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. One final question for you, just because we're curious, and I probably am just selfishly curious. What is your morning routine? What do you do when you get up in the morning to set yourself up for your day?
Oh man, my boyfriend's morning routine is much more exciting than mine. He has like a whole ritual that he does. I really get up and have coffee and then get to work.
Good for you.
I make sure I like to look at the sun first thing before I look at my phone. And I do like to feel like the sunlight and do a little bit of breath and like but I don't have like a practiced breath thing. If I do any kind of breath work in the morning, I do it with my boyfriend, and we do about 5 to 10 minutes together. And I love doing that with him. But it's not every single morning that we get to do that. We do get to be more mindful and do that more often. But right now it's really making sunlight is on my face before I put my face into my computer or my phone, getting some kind of movement, even if it's just a little stretch in the morning, a little bit of like mindful breath, coffee, and then I started out.
It's so funny. I have such an elaborate morning routine, and my fiance is exactly like you. He gets up and he's like okay, I got my coffee, sun on my face, let's go. We're total opposites. So I love that. It just reminds me of myself and him on the opposite spectrum. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing everything. And I just enjoyed listening and hearing more about your journey and your story. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you. Really quickly, for our listeners, where is the best place to contact you or find you? Where do you hang out most?
I hang out most on Instagram for sure, DocGenFit, but my YouTube, I'm sharing a lot more, 2 videos every week. You could dive in even deeper with some of the information that I have. So that's DocGenFit as well. And if anyone wants to see more of my work, docgenfit.com. So I keep it pretty easy across the board.
And do you have any upcoming events or anything that you'd like to share so that way we can promote that?
Well, me and my boyfriend are coming out with a podcast, which we're so excited about.
Oh my God.
And it's called The Optimal Body. So it's still very much we're gonna have PT pearls where we explain diagnoses, we explain different pain experiences in a way that people can understand it on a very, very easy level. So nothing too medical or anything. We want you to be able to understand what's happening within your body and break it down for you. So we're doing that, and then we will have on guests that the first guest right now, we're really, again, bringing on other PTs and keeping it very much about the body right now.
Power couple.
Yes.
Well, congrats on the podcast, Svetlana. Svetlana and I know it's a lot of work, but it's also so much fun, and so excited for you guys.
Yeah, let us know when you launch so we can do a shout out.
Thanks, I will.
And I will link all of your YouTube and your website and your Instagram in our show notes so everyone can easily access you. And thank you so much, Dr. Jen. It was so amazing. Thanks so much for coming on. Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.